I am one blessed person. In this short lifetime that I've had so far, I've been blessed with a supportive family, amazing friends and wonderful colleagues, and clients who not only tolerate my boldness, but fully encourage it. So thank you, friends and family cheering me on in the audience and also online. And I'm deeply honored that I get to stand before you, my people. Folks in education who believe that our young people deserve to learn in systems designed to cultivate their talents and designed to ensure that they thrive. While I might not be considered a young person anymore, I get to stand before you because I've had so many people cultivate and champion me. They bravely and defiantly bent systems to make room for me to shine and thrive, both as a learner and as an educator. For many of you, this is the first time we're meeting each other. And while I'm a former humanities teacher, a K-12 administrator, an avid proponent of performance-based assessment, a proud, pro-Black, anti-racist equity champion rooted in love and healing, a podcaster, and bae, I'm single, so shoot your shot, fellas, and bae, best auntie ever to my niece and nephews. And my niece picked out my outfit. She's my stylist too. She's 5, she's good. I am first and foremost the daughter of Janet Cecile. My mom is an ancestor now, and I like to say in a less organized form of love all around me, yet she is still my biggest champion. My mom was one of 11 children born to Lucille and Melwood Radigan, and she was number 8. She was barely 5 feet tall and wore a size 5 shoe, but she was a force. She immigrated to this country from Jamaica at the age of 21 with an almost 2-year-old, and she was determined, thank you, she was determined to parent in such a way that supported me and my brothers to be the very best versions of ourselves while nurturing our unique personalities. My mom had a home daycare center, and she loved little humans. She deeply centered and affirmed our humanity and made learning loud and joyful. My mom grew up at a time where children should be seen and not heard, especially girl children. And so she encouraged us to speak our minds, and she also listened to us, shifting our behaviors and our actions based on what we shared. And she made sure that anyone in our orbit did the same. I can remember my mom bringing me to parent-teacher conferences in elementary school when tradition said I wasn't supposed to be there. And sometimes teachers were bold enough to say this, and however, my mom being Janet, let it be known that I was the reason we both were in the room. So it only made sense that I be present and share my experiences in that class. And my mom even had the audacity to make sure I spoke first. So to be clear, I did not come to know student-led conferences and the powerful impact they have on learners from my education classes. I got it from my mama. Now I want you to think about someone who believed in you, who cultivated your gifts and your talents, and was your biggest advocate and champion. Think about how it felt to be in their presence, and think about the ways they boldly made room for you in places and spaces where maybe others did not think you belonged. Breathe in their love and support, and exhale a deep gratitude for the gift of their presence in your life. I wanted to introduce myself to you because I feel like I'm in a room full of Janets, educators who believe deeply in the humanity and the brilliance of our young people and are bold enough to bend and even break systems to create room for our babies to shine, especially our marginalized learners. Loretta described me as a transformational leader, and upon reflecting, I get that from my mama too. She was a Scorpio. But if I'm allowed to share an uncomfortable truth with you all, if we're honest with ourselves, many of us are okay with change, but many more of us are deeply uncomfortable, unskilled, and sometimes unwilling to do the work of transformation. I love to use the Water of Systems change framework to explain the difference between change and transformation. This framework helps us to identify 6 conditions and systems that hold problems in place. Therefore, if we're going to create systems change, we need to shift these 6 conditions. At the top are the conditions that are most visible in a system, and many of us as bold leaders try to change at first. On the next level are the semi-explicit conditions, and are usually more visible and accessible to those who already hold decision-making power. Sometimes as leaders, we dabble in this area as well. But let's be honest, we're cool and sometimes really proud of the changes we've made at those 5 levels. However, it's shifting the bottom condition in our system, the mental models, that really lead to transformative change. And that is why transformation evades most of our systems work. This framework defines mental models as the habits of thought, the deeply held beliefs and assumptions, and the taken for granted for ways of operating that influence how we think, what we do, and how we talk. Most systems theorists agree that mental models are foundational drivers of activities in any system. Unless we can learn to work at the 3rd level, changes on the other 2 levels at best will be temporary and incomplete. If we are not willing to go there, if we are not willing to go there, to create brave spaces where we uncover and examine our beliefs about students, assessment, teaching, and learning, then we are just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Our thoughts and beliefs drive our actions and our behaviors. Our dear friend Albert Einstein reminds us, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. We as leaders have to be willing to lead the hard work of transforming our deeply rooted individual and collective mindsets and beliefs about learning and learners. And that means we gotta go there. Y'all ready? All right. One of the most entrenched ideas and beliefs in our education system is rooted in racism, and that is the belief that intelligence can be measured. This fascination with measuring human intelligence is rooted in eugenics, a totally discredited pseudoscience that was founded by Francis Galton. He was related to Darwin, was inspired by Darwin's theory of evolution, and decided that those same principles could and should be applied to society. He measured everything he could about humans, and from his studies, he concluded that intelligence is rarely found in the disabled, in the poor, in women, and in non-white humans. These premises were widely held by many of the top thinkers of the day, who used their talents to create measurement tools and protocols like SATs and IQ tests that would prove eugenics to be true. And these test results were used to determine access to opportunities for others. Shameless plug here. I am blessed to be championed by Shane Safir, author of Listening Leader and Street Data. She was my first leadership coach, a longtime friend and partner in this work of school transformation. And some of you know we birthed a podcast together, Street Data Pod, where you can dream with us, where we dream with you about next generation schools that affirm, love, and value every learner. That's my tagline part. In season 2, episode 10, we talked with Doctors Linda and Kia Darling-Hammond about their book, The Civil Rights Road to Deeper Learning. Linda Darling-Hammond has long been a proponent of performance-based assessment. So let's listen to Linda describe how standardized tests are designed.
And those tests, by the way, are also constructed so that the items produce an artificial bell curve quite often. The thing they're looking for is whether the items have quote unquote discriminatory power, which is a double entendre because they're both intended.
Wow.
If too many kids know the answer to something, they throw that item out because it does not produce the bell curve. And if the wrong set of kids, those who don't normally score highly, know the answer, they also throw it out. So there's lots of ways in which tests are constructed to preserve the status quo and privilege that we have.
As Linda explained, most assessments, whether criterion or norm referenced, are designed to be discriminatory and maintain the status quo. At the heart of all this measuring of humans and intelligence sits the ideology, the myth of white supremacy. I know that using that term conjures up certain feelings, but we have to dig deep and be brave enough to bring this to the surface, where we can examine it in the light and transform our mindsets. Because we don't have to have membership in certain organizations or flash certain symbols to perpetuate this myth of white supremacy as educators. So I invite you to stay present and in your bodies and remain open to the uncomfortable feelings as we examine how white supremacy culture shows up in our assessment practices. In her updated 2021 article on white supremacy culture, Tema Okun essentially defines culture as the unconscious way of thinking and being as a group of people. And therefore, she defines white supremacy culture as the idea or ideology that white people and the ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and actions of white people are superior to people of color and their ideas, thoughts, beliefs, and actions. White supremacy culture is reproduced by all of our institutions in our society. It is the water we swim in, the air we breathe, and as Tema Okun reminds us, white supremacy culture comes for us all. And I believe the most effective way that we have perpetuated this myth of white supremacy in our education system is through hyper-focus on assessing students. It's mirror time, y'all. Just because you have adopted a competency or performance-based assessment system does not mean you have dismantled white supremacy culture. We have to be willing to face the ways in which paternalism and objectivity show up as mental models, even in our most progressive education systems. Paternalism might show up as those holding power, controlling the decision-making, and defining the standards, as well as assuming they are qualified to set the standard or make decisions on behalf of those who do not hold power. Objectivity might look like those with power requiring others to think in a linear, logical fashion and ignoring or invalidating those who think differently. Or it could look like those in power refusing to acknowledge the ways in which their logical thinking is often a cover for personal emotions or agendas. It's story time, y'all, right? So I was facilitating a PD with a small group of dedicated teachers working with a predominantly Black and brown student body to create a senior portfolio defense process. This is where students curate and reflect on work artifacts and present these artifacts as evidence of their proficiency in key academic skills, knowledge, and dispositions. A brilliant Black student had agreed to present his portfolio to help us calibrate our evidence-based rubrics and protocols. He chose to demonstrate how he grew to master communication and creativity, and he did so by comparing his creative and communicative processes to that of Megan Thee Stallion. He had obviously studied the rubric, and he was aiming for advanced, showing multiple examples, analyzing his processes and strategies for growth, and then demonstrating how he could apply his skills to other academic and life situations. Most of us had agreed that this baby demonstrated an advanced understanding of the district's grad profile competencies. However, there was one white male teacher who refused to listen to the evidence his colleagues were providing, and he would not score the student advanced. At first, he based his rationale on criteria that weren't even on the rubric. And when I pointed this out, he shifted his rationale to basically saying that he just doesn't feel this Black boy's defense was advanced. Can you see the way in which this dedicated teacher, who was a leader in the work and deeply believed in portfolio defenses, had not yet done the work to divest himself from his mental models of paternalism and objectivity? This teacher's beliefs and mindsets about this Black student could not and would not allow him to score that student advanced. When we believe that assessments, whether they be standards-based, portfolio defenses, badges, are for measuring and sorting who is and who is not capable, then we are actively perpetuating white supremacy culture, regardless of our good intentions. I want to bring in the voice of scholar and member of the Blackfoot people, Dr. Sydney Stone Brown. Shane and I got to interview her about her book, Transformation Beyond Greed, Native Self-Actualization. In that book, Dr. Sid reframes self-actualization as an octagon, not a pyramid like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because a basic tenet of the Blackfoot people, a basic tenet of the Blackfoot worldview is that there is no hierarchy. All living things are equal. And if you've listened to our podcast, and you should, once again, shameless plug, we usually end our conversations with a lightning round. One question is, what kind of data should every educator collect? And baby, when we asked Dr. Sid, she had some words for us. So let's listen to what she had to say.
I just love that this dominant world likes to count things.
Yes!
Why are we counting? Because it creates this hierarchy, and it creates a measurement, and things can be rather than being measured. They don't have to be compartmentalized. They don't have to be broke apart. The body and mind are connected. And when they disconnected that, we had psychology and we have physiology, and they don't talk to each other, but they need to. I didn't learn to express myself until I was a junior in high school. Measuring when people will be capable and what they're capable of is the greatest misfortune of our education system in this country.
Oh my God.
And it's based on European model, and it's time for us to redesign, and that's why I love street data.
We didn't tell her to say that, by the way. She just said that. Things can be rather than being measured. This idea flies in the face of all of our whole assessment systems that are hyper-focused on measuring. Our measurements of humans via grades, test scores, even competency or performance-based assessments, they have zero impact on student learning. If students learned just because we assessed them, well then we'd all be out of jobs. Dr. Sid reminds us that when we are unwilling or unable to do the hard work of transforming our individual and collective mindsets around assessment, we are perpetuating disconnection and reinforcing white supremacy culture. So I offer that if we're going to transform education and build liberatory assessment systems, we have to be willing to shift our beliefs of assessment from one of measuring and sorting to one that is actually more aligned with the word. I first heard this when I was doing some work with Beth Blankenship. She's a member of the Assessment for Learning community. Yep. Yes, well, I'm teleprompter guy. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Assessment for Learning community, and we were working with our educators to develop high-quality presentations of learning. When Beth reminded us that the word assessment comes from the Latin assidere, which means to sit beside another. This is the true spirit of the word. It's the mindset, it's the posture, it's the behavior we should adopt when we create assessment opportunities for our learners. How different, well, what would we design if we shifted our mental models of assessment from instruments that sort learners and learning to opportunities to witness learners and learning? How different would our schools, our policies, our actions, our relationships be if we educators thought of assessments as powerful vehicles that allow us to witness in the most sacred sense of the word, to cultivate and to champion learners and their learning. At Envision Learning Partners, we believe that every child deserves the experience of high-quality performance assessment opportunities where they can demonstrate what they know and can do. And our other mission is to democratize assessment knowledge and practices so that those closest to students and schools are equipped with the skills to create equitable, rigorous, reliable, and valid performance assessments that disrupt and dismantle white supremacy culture. A few years back, my dear, wonderful colleague, Dr. Ruth Chung Wei, who we affectionately refer to as TGR on our team, the Great Ruth, she led our team in creating a very simple, easy to understand, and universal set of criteria for creating high-quality performance assessments, HQPA for short. And we also at ELP love a good metaphor. And so when we think about our 5 criteria of HQPA, think of them as Lego blocks. If you've ever tried to build anything beautiful with Legos, you know 2 things to be true. You will need to take your time, and you will need to use different sized Legos. So these are our 5 criteria. They are eliciting evidence of learning that matters, being tight on criteria for success while also being open to different learner approaches. High-quality performance assessments should be authentic, and they should be a learning experience in and of themselves. All 5 of these are critical, and it takes tons of practice to use all 5 when building your beautiful HQPAs. However, just start somewhere and use the Legos you already have. And if you want to begin to transform your own beliefs and the beliefs of others in your system, begin with these 3. The first, and probably the most critical, is to make sure that your HQPA is eliciting the skills and knowledge that matter most. Most districts and schools will do this by aligning their assessments to their vision of a graduate or their grad profile. But unless your grad profile was created with and by diverse community members, including the voices of the most marginalized in your system, well, you're just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Going to the community to figure out the skills, the knowledge, the attributes, the dispositions they want our young people to embody allows you to move beyond paternalism and objectivity. You get to hear what others value, and you get to practice shifting your mindset and the power dynamics within your system. The skills that you say matter should also be cognitively complex and transferable. Oftentimes, because we still believe in this myth of white supremacy, we think Black, Brown, Indigenous learners, English language learners, and learners with disabilities are not intelligent or capable enough, and therefore must master the basics before they can get to the complex. In this way, we are creating the cognitive gaps that show up as standardized test results. So it's important that in our design process, we interrogate and hold to light the skills and knowledge we say matter. And we need to make sure that we're not just saying that some skills are more important for certain students to demonstrate. Being open to different learner approaches allows learners, especially our most marginalized, to make decisions about what they will learn deeply and how they want to demonstrate what they know and can do. And this is a powerful antidote to white supremacy culture. When done intentionally, it is ceding power to them in the most impactful ways. And it usually results in engagement of learners that we have written off as distracted, disengaged, and lazy. Our last criteria for HQPA is that it should be a learning experience in and of itself, which means our assessments should be designed with opportunities for reflection, feedback, and revision built in. And this is for both students and educators. When we build our students' capacity to think about what and how they are learning and to plan for and receive and incorporate feedback that they find useful in achieving their goals and their results, and when we build in time for them to revise their work until it represents their best effort and skill, we are dismantling white supremacy culture. John Dewey says, "We do not learn from having experiences. We learn by reflecting on our experiences." Reflection is one of the most powerful antidotes to white supremacy culture because it gives us time to pause and think. And when we pause and think about what's happening, that enables us to move from a more empowered and liberatory place. So what do you get when you use these Lego blocks to create HQPAs for our most marginalized learners? Well, let's listen to M, a transgender student at an Envision school, share his experience with HQPAs. During a Kiva panel, and Shane writes about this process, and I highly suggest you do this with your learners if you want to know how they're experiencing your assessments. We asked M to think about an engaging assignment or project that you enjoyed doing as a student. What were you asked to do? What did you enjoy about that assignment? What learning has stuck with you since completing the assignment? Let's listen to M share his story of learning, and let's listen for the HQPA criteria I just shared, as well as how empowered this young person is.
So recently, with the impacts of COVID on, the way we learn and how we do school, especially this last year when everything was done online, we weren't able to do those big projects like exhibitions and portfolios. So what we did in place of those were these projects called POLs, presentations of learning. And we would do multiple of those throughout the year, at least one per semester, I believe. And those projects really stuck out to me because it wasn't something that you had to base on your school. Like, you would pick a project or a moment or something meaningful and then reflect on how you grew from that. But what you chose to reflect on didn't have to be school-based. It could be something from within your life, an experience you had. And what I did is I kept choosing very meaningful and true-to-life projects for myself. Like, one topic I had chosen to reflect on was the transphobia I experienced within my family. And another being the way that I was raised, the parenting I grew up with, and how that affected me, and how I want to break those negative cycles if I ever do become a parent myself. So projects like that really let me reflect on issues in my life that I never saw as issues. Because when you grow up with something like that, you don't see anything different, you think that's normal, you think that's okay. And being able to reflect on that and just broaden what I've been looking at, like the lens I've been looking through, lets me see that I can be better, and I can do better, I can grow. And maybe I'll be able to get on the path where I can teach other people to grow with me.
Okay, this is where I might cry, right? What we just heard, to borrow a phrase from Dr. Kia Darling Hammond, is learning in the most delicious sense of the word. And can you imagine how blessed M's teachers felt to sit beside him and witness him discover his power as a human and as a learner, and hear him want to use his power to make the world a more just and inclusive place? This, my friends, is the power and the legacy of designing high-quality performance assessment systems. All right. So I said in the beginning of this talk that I am in a room full of Janets, folks who know how to love, affirm, and champion others deeply. And I have felt every bit of the love and support from you all online and in this room. You have made my mother very proud because you have loved her baby well. But I'd be lying, and my mom did not raise a liar, if I led you to believe that it was all rainbows and sunshines growing up with this lady right here. She held high expectations and challenged me like no other, because she always challenged me to do and be my best. So I'm gonna channel my mama, and I'm gonna challenge you. We're gonna apply some heat. Y'all ready? Okay. I've dubbed this the Janet Challenge, okay? First, I want you to be honest with yourselves as you experience the rest of this symposium. Acknowledge the mental models, the ideas and ways of being within you and your systems that are unintentionally upholding white supremacy culture. No need to feel guilt or shame about it, because we all have adopted some of these ideas in order to survive in the times that we are living. But I'm asking you lovingly and gently to let them go. They are no longer serving us because we are designing equitable schools and systems where we all can thrive. Next, I challenge you to be a learner. My mom was so annoying because she could be a bit of a know-it-all. And guess what? I'm sorry. I get that from my mama too. And I know it's hard-earned. Some of us have been in this education game for a while. Like, don't let the eye cream fool you. I got 20 years in this piece, right? I've been doing this for a while. And some of you have earned those letters behind your name, or you've earned that fancy title that indicates you're at the tippy top of your system or organization. But I challenge you to be vulnerable and take on the mindsets, the beliefs, and the dispositions of a learner. Over the next few days, try to enter rooms and conversations ready to learn, ready to experience, and ready to practice a new skill or way of being. And then finally, challenge yourself to be a listener. Listen with your whole body and your whole being, not just your ears. Be on the lookout for how others, whether individuals or as systems, are listening. Listen for how others are creating transformative change, and do so without judging or comparing or critiquing. Most importantly, listen to the babies. At lunch, we'll get to hear from students sharing their stories and their learning experiences, and let's commit to listening to them, to listening to others, even when what they have to say challenges what we think or what we know. So, are you ready to take the Janet challenge? We're ready to be honest, to be a learner, and to be a listener? Are y'all ready? Good. So now let's go out there, boldly break some systems in service of learners and learning, and let's make Janet proud. Thank you.